Garlinghouse in studio, no less. Let's get to Ether first. Word on the street is that spot Ether ETF is going to come alive. It's alive next month, as early as next month, maybe July. Who knows? What do you think?
I think that's right. And I think it is a big deal just in terms of further opening the markets to more people who want to access it. Obviously, the Bitcoin ETF went live in January. And you saw 10 billion. I mean, it took, I think, 2 months to reach the same level it took gold ETF to reach over like a year. So the interest in this space remains very, very high. And I think the ETH ETF will do extremely well.
What do you think is behind the SEC becoming, let's just call it more pragmatic about cryptocurrency ETFs and the approval process?
Well, I think the first thing is they've lost a lot in court. And so, you know, they really got dragged kicking and screaming across the line to get the Bitcoin ETF live. And I think they realized that if they were going to drag their feet and fight around the ETH ETF, that likely the same outcome was going to happen. And I mean, it's frustrating that we have to go through the courts to get those positive outcomes. The United States should be investing in these technologies. We should be embracing these from a job creation, from a technical innovation. And unfortunately, this SEC has been fighting it, you know, every step of the way.
I've known you for, I don't know, 7 years now. And back then, y'all didn't have that loud a voice.
For sure.
It feels like you do now. So what about an XRP ETF? You were speaking at the Consensus 2024 conference just a week ago, and you said inevitable, not just for XRP, but Solana and Cardano, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But XRP in particular, the SEC has tried to throw you down in court.
Yeah.
Don't you think that Gensler and company might just say, "Now that one, no way"?
I think it's a hard argument with them to win. I mean, can they make life difficult? They've made life difficult for a lot of people, then they've lost in court. What I was talking about at the Consensus conference last week in Austin was that people don't want just exposure to one commodity. So if you have exposure to gold, you might want exposure to silver. If you have exposure to other commodities. And so to me, it only makes sense. You don't want to have just a single threaded asset exposure. So I think people also forget that it wasn't that long ago, before the SEC got involved, that XRP was the second most valuable digital asset. And that was before the SEC kind of anointed ETH. Then they couldn't answer the question, is ETH a security or not? And now they've approved the ETF. They contradict each other. It's very contradict themselves. It's very difficult to follow.
Let's not assume that all our investor audience understand what XRP is. XRP is the token or the coin that Ripple, which is a money transaction site, right, that is charged, right?
Yeah.
You get paid in XRP, but it's become something that people can also buy whether they use the Ripple blockchain, right?
Correct. So XRP is a digital asset, not that dissimilar than Bitcoin or ETH. There's different characteristics of each asset. Bitcoin has really become digital gold and it has thrived because of that. ETH, there's a lot of excitement around the smart contracts capabilities. XRP is extremely fast on a per transaction basis and extremely inexpensive. People talk about gas fees and transaction costs of some other tokens. Ripple uses XRP as part of our technical stack to do cross-border payment flows.
And you charge whoever is moving the money,
Correct.
What, 0.00001 of XRP, which stands around 51 cents or something right now. But here's my question. Right now, the main competitor in that space is SWIFT. That, of course, is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Transactions. That's the global one that a lot of people use. They charge much more, do they not?
Yeah, they really are the dominant. I mean, SWIFT has been around for, 50, 60 years. And the frustrating part for all of us as users of SWIFT is that it really hasn't changed in 50 or 60 years. The architecture of how it works, it means it's slow, it's expensive, and frankly, it's quite error prone. Some studies have shown that about 6% of all SWIFT attempts to wire a SWIFT transaction end up in errors that bounce back, and then it takes days to get it back.
What about you guys?
Well, an XRP transaction and a payment flow for us is really real time. It's instant, it's cross-border, and the really powerful thing for a lot of our customers is they don't have to pre-fund accounts, because our customers are financial institutions. And the way SWIFT works is you're pre-funding, you have dormant capital sitting in other banks around the world. Using XRP, using RippleNet, our payments network, you don't have to pre-fund.
When we look at this suddenly coming alive cryptocurrency, at least in the past week or so, so now we've got Bitcoin back above 70,000. Some people are making the connection between that and the Roaring Kitty re-entry into the world, reactivating his account on Reddit and saying he owns $115 million worth of GameStop shares. Do you see any connection between his sudden emergence and all of the cryptos moving higher, like a meme stock feel back in 2021 where people were also diving into crypto?
Yeah, I think this momentum is really driven from what's happening on a political basis. And the United States remains the largest economy in the world, and it has been kind of backwards as its approach to cryptocurrencies. You know, countries like the UK are way ahead, Japan, Singapore, Switzerland. I mean, we are really behind the rest of the world.
And Ripple has offices in many of those cities.
We do. We have 14 offices around the world. And so for me, I think what's really driving the momentum right now is seeing that, you even said this earlier, the voice of crypto, the voice of Ripple, and is really gone up in the conversation in the United States. I think you're seeing shifts.
Well, some of that is money. You yourself, over the past 2 years, have given a total of $50 million to Fair Shake, the lobby firm that cryptocurrency people are really kind of filling the coffers there. And suddenly you have Donald Trump saying, I'm the crypto president. You have Joe Biden making some noise about, you know, come on, lay off the regulations a little bit. You guys suddenly have a voice. You're the kitten that roared in a way.
Yeah. So I think it's less about the roaring kitten and more about, hey, finally you're seeing some of the political machinery in the United States move and act. And look, we haven't yet seen the Biden administration. They've said some things, but they haven't followed this up with actions. You have seen Trump make this part of his campaign. I think it's incredibly smart and incredibly strategic. This is a topic that has a lot of passionate people, and this is an excitement and enthusiasm that are pro-innovation, pro these technologies, and know that they can be used in ways to protect consumers all at the same time. I think it's crazy that it ever became a partisan issue, but I think that the Republicans are being very strategic in how they're approaching that, and I think it's becoming an election issue, which I think is good for the industry, and thus I think it's driving some momentum in the market.
Brad, we'll be watching. Okay, XRP ETF.
How we got here, where we think we should be going. We will not break with tradition. I'm going to do that again this year. But I just want to start by telling you why I'm so much more excited now than I have been before. First of all, it's because, I mean, this crowd, just the number of people, these events always energize me. But also, you know, I'm an old guy. I lived through the internet revolution. In the late 80s, early 90s, I kind of felt like I was the only person who knew the internet existed, or what became the internet existed. The technology was nascent, and internet culture was a bunch of nerds, you know, in some garage somewhere, and then there was popular culture. Today, internet culture and popular culture are the same thing, right? There is no distinction between internet culture and popular culture. We're starting to see that happen with blockchain right now. We're starting to see that turn, whether it's blockchain politics becoming an issue in the election in the United States, whether it's the Bitcoin ETFs and the ETFs launching, stablecoins, institutional projects that are enabling DeFi ecosystems on the blockchain. We're starting to see that path to mass adoption really happen. We're not the only people who know about blockchain anymore, right? It used to be that the only people who knew about blockchain or cared about, you know, crypto were the people who were in the space. But there's people in the finance space now, people in computer science. They all understand what's happening here. And that's exactly what led to mass adoption with the internet. So let's talk about where the XRP ledger has gone in the past, what, almost 12 years now? It is fully decentralized. There's more than 600 nodes processing transactions and maintaining the ledger. And importantly, each of those nodes enforces all of the system rules. And unlike on most other blockchains, those nodes are enforcing censorship resistance as well. There's more than 120 validators. We're probably the only major blockchain with no in-protocol incentives for block production or running a validator. People run validators because they want the network to work. They want the network to be robust. They want the network to be reliable and decentralized. They're run by individuals, businesses, universities. There's over 1,750 apps, exchanges on mainnet, built by a diverse set of global developers, many of whom in the room with us today. More than 2.8 billion transactions have been processed. For some time, more than 50% of transactions being processed on public blockchains were on the XRP ledger. It's gone down a lot since then because the rest of the universe has grown, but the XRP ledger has continued to process transactions at that high rate. No transaction has ever been discriminated against, filtered, censored, misexecuted, dropped, mishandled, right? It is a fair system because every single node on the network enforces that type of fairness. There's more than 5 million active XRP wallet holders around the world, and that's a real number. On a lot of other blockchains, for example, on UTXO-based blockchains like Bitcoin, a single user probably has a number of addresses. And so the address numbers may be very, very large, but those addresses don't actually reflect users, right? So those 5 million are probably real people who are using the XRP ledger, and they're using the ledger directly, right? There's a lot of people who hold Bitcoin, hold Ether, who will never use those blockchains directly. These are people who are actually potential customers for projects built on the XRP ledger because they have access to the ledger. They have their money on chain. Market capitalization of XRP is in excess of $30 billion. Makes it about the 6th largest cryptocurrency, depending on exactly what you consider to be a cryptocurrency. The number of contributors building projects of different types on the XRP ledger is enormous. As you can see on the slide, we have a large group of companies that are building wallets, custody, compliance, and security. These are tools that enable people to hold XRP, use the XRP ledger, participate in the ecosystem. Infrastructure, tools, and analytics companies. There's a lot of stuff going on the XRP ledger. The transaction rate is high. If you can't understand what's going on, you can't interact. Wallets need backends, right? There needs to be reliable hardware infrastructure. The gaming and metaverse space is a little bit on the small side, but it's been very exciting and interesting. Companies like Forte building interesting metaverse projects. And of course, marketplaces, DEXs, real-world asset tokenization and lending. These are projects building on top of the issued assets, the NFT technology, the DEX, the XRP ledger's DEX. And then, of course, core ledger development. Ripple can't be the only people building, on the core ledger. Interoperability is extremely important. I'll talk more about that later, but we're not going to have a compelling ecosystem if we have a bunch of separate islands that have different functionality that don't connect. That's not going to be a great user experience. And then payments and stablecoins and on-ramps and off-ramps are absolutely essential. For most of us, it's not difficult for us to get money onto or off of the blockchain. A lot of us are privileged enough that we have money that we can play with on a blockchain that we don't even really think about as real money. In the early days of Bitcoin, we jokingly said, well, I have my bank account and then I have this magic internet money, right? It is great to be able to be in a position where you can do that. But realistically, if we're trying to adopt to most of the world, it's going to have to be the money that they get paid at their job. It's going to have to be the money they use to pay their rent. It's going to have to be the money that they use to buy groceries because that's the money they have. They don't have a giant pile of money to mess around with this cool new technology. And so we have to connect. If we don't connect, we will not be able to get mass adoption. It'll always be limited to a bunch of privileged rich people. That's not exciting. So I want to take a step back and I want to talk about that inflection point that I was talking about and what's going on right now. And one of the places where you can see that the most easily, I think, is with stablecoins. The current market cap of stablecoins is around $160 billion, and it's growing so rapidly that that number is, it's going to be obsolete by in months. It's expected to grow to almost $3 trillion by 2028. And this is the next statistic is, I think, the most important one. Remember, I was talking about bleeding over into popular culture. It's great if everybody in the Bitcoin space thinks Bitcoin's great. If everybody in the crypto space thinks cryptocurrency is going to take over. Everyone in the DeFi space thinks DeFi is going to be the next big thing. What about people outside the space? 97% of institutional investors believe that tokenization is going to significantly affect asset management. These are people who they're not Bitcoin people, they're not crypto people, they're not blockchain people, they're not DeFi people, they're institutional investors. These are some of the most conservative people in the world, right? And they think that the technologies that we're building are going to revolutionize their industry. That is that bleed over into popular culture. The market value of tokenized U.S. securities alone is $1.5 billion. This is a new space. So that is that number is probably different by the time I get off this stage. And of course, the growth of tokenized assets, $16 trillion forecast by 2030. I think that's probably going to be conservative. It just makes sense to get into these spaces. If DeFi spaces and tokenized spaces are where the investors are going to be or where the money is going to be, that's got to be where the assets are, right? The assets are going to chase the money. So what does Ripple think that we need for the XRP ledger to benefit from this? Well, we need core financial primitives, right? We can't have real-world asset tokenization if we don't have primitives to launch tokenized assets, right? We can't have on-chain lending if we don't have primitives for on-chain lending. And real utility has to be the guiding principle. We have to build the technologies that are the things that the market wants, right? We have to build a product that fits the market demand. Extremely important that people can build and launch compliant projects. And this is the key thing. We want enterprise projects that are compliant, but that bring customers into blockchains, right? If enterprises use the XRP ledger just for payments, that's great. That's not a bad thing, but that's not going to bring their customers onto the XRP ledger. If they use the XRP ledger to launch tokenized loans, that's going to bring the people who are going to fund those loans and who want a return onto the ledger. That's the difference in the sort of institutional DeFi type of adoption and the traditional institutional adoption that we've seen. We really see that with stablecoins, right? A stablecoin is probably one of the most regulated products in the crypto space. If you look at companies like Circle, Tether, the forthcoming Ripple stablecoin, these are going to be heavily regulated products, right? Most of us will never be able to get a stablecoin directly from its issuer or redeem a stablecoin with its issuer. But there are millions of people who can hold USDT, hold USDC, hold the forthcoming Ripple stablecoin, who knows what jurisdiction, though. They'll be in real DeFi ecosystem.